Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cord Ratnowski, publisher of Yankee T News, coming to you on this Monday, August 5th of the year of our Lord 2024 from the fabulous Curly's Diner in Stamford, Connecticut. We had a little change of plans, so here we are. So first of all, go to our site, yankeet.news, like, subscribe, donate, and soon be buying our stuff, and tell everyone. And of course, Bob Mack for Congress. I have a few things to throw in on that part. Definitely donate to Bob McGuffey. Okay, so a quick, I have to mention, his opponent in the primary, Dr. Michael Goldstein, has gotten into a little hot water, okay? I would like to remind you of the scandal where Governor Lamont had clear-cut a huge swath of land, and the town went after him for that. Well, it seems like Dr. Goldstein will not be outdone. So he apparently had brought in thousands, not thousands, actually around 1,000 truckloads of soil to raise, fill in, and create a huge wall next to the edge of his property, which happens to be on the Byram River. Well, obviously he knows nothing about the water gods in Greenwich. So the waste, I'm trying to think of the name, the Commission for Wetter Water Permits. How's that sound? Wrote him a letter saying he should have done that. There was a big article in the Greenwich Time. We'll be posting it. And very embarrassing for Dr. Goldstein. Now, the good side is he's making good on it, but it just shows the kind of bad judgment that I don't think any of us would want to vote for to go to Washington, just saying. Meantime, I just wanted to throw up two specials that came in at the last minute here. There's this one, okay, if you have a look. California School District makes students audit their privilege, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that one of the cornerstone principles of communism is what you call the struggle session. So this is where you confess your sins. This is where you try to make yourself supposedly a better person in the eyes of communism, okay? That's what they're doing right here. But it's being done in the context of what we'll call racial identity. So I would hope that more people will speak out against this. Thankfully, there's a group called Parents Defending Education who have jumped on this, but this is outrageous, so that's why I had to tell you about it. Meantime, the other quick special, it turns out that ex-director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheadle, it has been learned from, I believe, 3 separate sources, she sought to have the cocaine evidence in the White House destroyed. However, the forensics team for the Secret Services and the Uniform Division refused to let her do it. But keep that in mind. This same person for whom there are these questionable practices around the assassination attempt had also tried to cover for the Bidens by destroying the cocaine evidence. Outrageous. Okay, meantime, so the way I want to pose this is, riddle me this, Kamala Harris, all right? So the way I put it is that there are 3 tightly linked puzzles that show what is wrong with Joker Kamala Harris. Besides the bad makeup choices, the puzzles are international relations, everything going wrong in America, and her continued absence from the press, and her failure to say anything of substance about the issues affecting this country. So let me just pose a couple of quick riddles. Can you get elected by saying nothing and counting on election fraud? Will we vote for you by your avoiding the press and reciting talking points? Unburdening ourselves. So my question to her is, does unburdening ourselves of the past mean a future with no burdens? So I could go on. So also, I just want to point out that we're in a very rough time right now. We've seen what's been happening with the stock market. We see the violence in the UK, ongoing problems of the border, and still, she's nowhere to be found. So I think we should all draw some lessons from this, take a little time to study it, but I think it should be obvious what we're looking at here. So, all right, let me go on to the first hot issue here, okay? So the first hot issue is this article about an epidemic of racism infecting Connecticut schools, officials say. Well, what do you want to believe? What do you want to believe, folks? I will just say that this article by the Hartford Courant, okay, it misses the point, all right? They draw on the same old shibboleths, and they really don't look at what's the real problem with racism in the schools. I will give you a hint. The hint is called DEI, okay? The schools in which they have attempted to institute these programs are, in a word, backfiring. It's been going on for a couple of years. Data is coming in from around the country, and that data is sending a very clear message. You're not producing racial harmony. In fact, you're getting the opposite. So this is an issue, and this article didn't really address it, okay? Now, meantime, down the street, here we have people like Chris Shays. Chris Shays is still remembered very well around here when he served in Congress, but he has really drifted, shall we say, ever more leftward. And so now he has happily joined a GOP group that wants to endorse Joker Harris. Sorry to hear that. And there will be a few others. So let's just be aware of this. And of course, nobody said anything about the Democrats who are going to come out and support Trump. That's a whole other discussion. Yes. Okay. And, you know, it's Politico, of all people, who actually noticed there's a problem here. It's all this time has passed since this hoopla over her becoming the presidential candidate, and we're still waiting for a definitive statement from her. We're still waiting for her to stand up and hold a press conference. Talk to the press, Kamala. Come on, what's the matter? So it's not happening. Okay, so if Politico's pointing it out, you know there's a problem. Now, the other hot item I want to get to, this is a little difficult, so I want to lean on the article itself, but Eric and I were having a big debate over this. So somebody brought to everybody's attention that Google has been reinstituting a number of software features that seem to be adding another layer of surveillance, if you will, to what you and I do on an ordinary basis. And in fact, one of the claims is that these software measures that have been imposed primarily through YouTube, how should I put this? They are making it hard to share videos, among other things. So there's a long discussion in here. They get at this thing called Privacy Badger, which may be a solution to the problem. Definitely go have a look at that. Meantime, oh my goodness, meantime, what's the next thing? Yeah, the next thing here, bear with me. Tulsi Gabbard. Has anybody here ever heard of the Quiet Skies program? I just learned about it. So here's the thing. I'll just quickly read this paragraph. Several federal air marshal whistleblowers who have come forward to expose the former U.S. Representative 2020 Democrat President Tulsi Gabbard is being currently enrolled in the controversial Quiet Skies program. Well, the thing that's weird about the Quiet Skies program, it's primarily directed at tracking people who were in the area of the Capitol on January 6th. You mean Tulsi Gabbard was there and she's worthy of being considered a domestic terrorist? Well, that should be interesting. So we'll see. So this is news. I'm sure Tulsi will have a few things to say about this. But I mean, this is just one further measure of how we have a government that's becoming increasingly indistinguishable from the Stasi from East Germany days. Okay, now, it's called the Shapiro Sex Harassment Shuffle. Yeah. So there's two brief notes here. All right, it looks clear at this point that the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, will be Kamala's vice presidential pick. Some people are a little concerned because Mr. Shapiro's stage presence is a little bit better than Kamala's, so he might outshine her, so they're going to have to figure out a way to handle that. In the meantime, though, I'll just read these short passages. Mark Levin pointed out the Josh Shapiro problem, in addition to the hush money scandal in his gubernatorial office, he's been flip-flopping also on Israel. And Jack Posobiec points out, Shapiro now claims that he didn't know of sexual misconduct allegations against his aide until months later, even though he held a meeting about it right after it happened. Okay, so to what extent is this going to follow him around? We're going to have to see, and I'm sure there's some other issues. But as an aside, I want to point out that there was a moment for a victory dance where Scott Pressler and others who had been working on voter registration in Pennsylvania announced that they had, quote, turned Pennsylvania red in terms of voter registration. So I find this quote very interesting. All right, so the other hot thing I want to bring up that is of concern, let's see if I got my things covered here. Yeah, all right. They're called Tren de Aragua, which is a drug gang out of Venezuela. And they are being portrayed as particularly vicious, particularly hateful, particularly destructive. So it's just a warning to everybody. And see, but you get two versions here. One says that these gangs are competing with each other, but what they don't talk about is where the gangs start to cooperate with each other. Okay, and cooperation is going to have many faces to it. It's going to be corrupting the local police. It's going to be setting up safe houses in any kind of town in this country. It's going to be corrupting the local government. You can count on it. Unless we do something about it, that's what our future looks like, okay? All right, now, in a way, this story should be the most important story. It has to do with the Secret Service disclosing, revealing that, gee, this rally in Butler, PA was the only one where we have actually had a counter-sniper team. What? You mean you didn't have counter-sniper teams at all these other rallies? Well, this raises a ton of questions. Okay, and I'm just going to put it simple. The reason they had a counter-sniper team here was because people had foreknowledge that something was going to happen. Were they a part of it or not? That's what we hope to find out. But the cynical quote is, they wanted to make sure the assassin was taken out after he finished. Okay, that's the thing to chew on as far as that's concerned. All right, now the situation in England is concerning. All right, just for background, remember the 3 little girls, ages 6, 7, and 9, were stabbed to death by this Rwandan immigrant, age 17. So he was a teenager, all right? But it was mishandled to such an extent that a lot of people were outraged. And thanks to a feckless British government, what should have been a well-controlled and contained incident has spun out of control. I believe it's something like, it's more than a dozen. It could be a couple dozen cities around England where riots have happened and there have been these huge protests. Okay, that's bad enough. But now, what are you going to do when they show up at 10 Downing Street, which is exactly what happened. So now you find that, what's this guy's name, the premier? Oh, God. I apologize, folks. I should know this guy's name right off the bat. But the current premier of the UK has threatened to go after these, quote, right-wing thugs, while totally ignoring the other people, the Islamists, who in many ways are even more violent. You know, it's been a long-running problem, and the British government has been very one-sided in how they handle this. So as one person has suggested, you know what? Britain has become an Islamist state. Britain is longer Britain. Something to chew on. You know, what's going to happen, my cautionary note is expect something like this to find its way to America. It'll be what the Democrats need. Now, this other piece, this is my think piece choice of the night. It's why America has more lawyers per capita than any other country. So there are two parts to this article that I just want to emphasize. The first is that this piece does a pretty good historical review of how regulation has grown in America. And in spite of, you know, the efforts of Ronald Reagan and the efforts of Donald Trump, the regulatory state has continued to expand. Now, maybe the Chevron defense ruling will help, deference ruling will help, but it's going to take a lot to begin to bring these people under control. So the point is, as the regulatory state has grown, so is also the number of lawyers around managing those regulations. However, the cynical part we're not going to like, is that a lot of this has to do with a very simple observation that's been brought up before. Regulation, federal regulation, serves the interest of the wealthy and powerful, and not the interest of you and me, all right? So, okay, of course, that brings us back to the same old tired observation. Lawyers protect the wealthy and powerful. So I'm just wondering if there's another way to interpret this. On the one hand, we can say you have expanding centralized power, and the lawyers are the enablers for protecting that expanded power, all right? But on the other hand, is there something else in this system that's going out of control that requires them to keep expanding their power? It's a rhetorical question. I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to ask it. All right, so there's that. It's a long article, but I highly recommend it. Meantime, you may or may not remember, there's a gentleman named Derek Bok, who used to be the president of Harvard a long time ago. Oh yes, 71 to 91, that's when he served. And again from 2006 to 2007. Well, as we know, especially the so-called elite colleges and universities have been under a lot of pressure because they've gone woke in the worst possible way. What do you got there? Massive victory against fascist Google as federal judge rules that violated American antitrust law. Well, I like that. Sounds good. Okay. We'll keep that in mind. We'll have more on that. We're going to obviously look into that and more. And oh, by the way, when I mentioned the Aragua drug cartel, this should be put in the context of what's happening in Venezuela right now. Okay, we've had the federal government saying to Maduro, you've lost, it's time for you to go, but he's still holding on to power, and he's being told, look, the evidence is there. All these people collected all this evidence from the polls showing that you basically lost in round numbers 75 to 25 or something like that, 82. It was a very lopsided victory. So that said, what is America going to do? All right, what are you going to do to push out one of your fellow communists? Now, let's see how that goes. All right, enough of that. Back to Harvard and Derek Bok. Okay, so he's written a book titled Attacking the Elites, What Critics Got Wrong and Right About America's Leading Universities. You know what? I'm going to come up with a simpler analysis based upon the comments in this article. Derek Bok, your book sucks. Okay, the reason it sucks is because you conducted what's called a mild analysis. So when you're doing a mild analysis, you're not really confronting the issues, at least not in a meaningful way. You know, with the wave of a hand, with the roll of the eye, you might point to a few things, but otherwise, no. Nonetheless, it's important to realize that one such as Derek Bok has been, quote, flushed out to have to begin to deal with these things because the situation in the universities continues to get worse, not better. Now, this story, you know what? It gets weird. Let me start with the title that I set up here. It is, do we finally have evidence for the 2020 fraud? So the star of the show here is a company called GBI Strategies. It's a for-profit corporation based in Tennessee. And they were caught with thousands of fraudulent ballots, okay? There was some individual who was attempting to get these into the system, and the problem, of course, is it was not possible to pull them back out of the system. So the fraudulent ballots just got mixed in with everything else. Gee, that's too bad. But here's the part where I want to just raise a question. These companies, if you will, these groups like GBI Strategies, serve a clear function. All right, and it says here they were given $4 million, and then there was another million involved, and another 2 million involved. So this is what you would call serious money for an organization if they're handling an election. Okay, so they're caught submitting these fraudulent voter registrations. But when the Michigan authorities raided their office, I want to point out there were 3 things that this article mentions, okay? 3 things. Prepaid gift cards, firearms equipped with silencers, and disposable burner phones. Well, excuse me, 2 of those 3 would be the kinds of things that, quote, secret agents might use in an undercover capacity with deadly intent. This is supposed to be about election. What are guys dealing with ballots, dealing with guns with silencers? This makes no sense, okay? So they started to take a look, and, well, I guess they decided they just couldn't solve the mystery because they're not trying hard enough. Meantime, there's this other quote here. Let's see here. This is, I'm going to just say the name, Dawn Ison, I-S-O-N, United States Assistant Attorney, Public Corruption Unit. This dates back to 2020. And a gentleman named Matthew Schneider, who was a part of the Department of Justice back then, maybe he was the last honest person, brought to the attention of the organization email from an attorney that describes what appears to be ballot fraud in Detroit. Okay. And then he goes on and says, this is so important. This is so important. I've got to read this. Dear Matthew, I am following up with some information on one of the most egregious situations that I encountered over the past few days at the TCF Center, that's in Michigan. There were many examples of significant election integrity issues, but this example involves actions of, wait for it, government officials from both the local and state governments that are shocking if true, okay? Shocking if true. So again, we're presented with this information that should point to criminal behavior, but there's no follow-up. People keep trying to bury it. It's unbelievable. All right, let me get to the last one. And this is also kind of shocking. Okay, this should be in the KAMALA file. I'll just read the headline. Blocked Office of Inspector General report confirms KAMALA's Secret Service role in the January 6th pipe bomb cover-up. Now, Revolver.news, if you go back there, you can get a historical overview of what's been going on. All this was around the discovery of pipe bombs that were at the RNC headquarters and the DNC headquarters in Washington, okay? So, first of all, the author of this article likes to suggest that the Inspector General is a good guy by pointing out that the Democrats hate him. And it's been documented extensively by Julie Kelly. But the part that I want to bring to your attention right here, just read the passage, was that KAMALA passed within 20 feet of the pipe bomb of the DNC headquarters as she drove through the DNC parking garage. And so this is the thing that's been bothering Revolver.news. Why were they not concerned? Why did the Secret Service not step up? Well, now, again, based upon what appear to be confidential sources and the work of this Inspector General, you know what? The Secret Service was a part of the cover-up. KAMALA's Secret Service was a part of the cover-up for this pipe bomb, or what we'll call, better yet, the pipe bomb hoax. So await further details, but you know, the way I put it in the article is, oops, another veil dropped. Okay, so a little bit, we're getting a little bit closer to the truth. So that's it for now. Thank you very much, and look forward to the other things that will be coming out soon. All right, bye-bye.